Hi, in this video I want to have a look at this famous chord sequence. I'm sure when you heard that chord sequence it sounded quite familiar. It's been used in a number of really famous songs like Grange by ZZ Top, On the Road Again by Canned Heat, and Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum. It's quite an easy sequence to play and it has a great sound to it. So in this video, I'm going to have a look at it and show you how to play it. Okay, first I want to have a look at the chords that are used in this sequence. Now it's a relatively easy sequence to play and there are only 3 chords used. In this example, I'm going to start on an A chord, and that's the same chords that are used in Grange by ZZ Top. So for these examples, I'm just going to play fifth or power chords on the guitar. So the first chord we're going to be using is A. The next chord is C. And then we'll slide that up to a D chord. And then just return back to the A again. Like so. So when you play it, it sounds like this. And that's the 3 chords that would be used in the sequence if you were starting on A. It would be A, C, and D. Now obviously this can be transposed and played in other keys. And some of the other pieces of music like On the Road Again by Canned Heat is played in a different key, so it uses different chords. But ultimately the spacing between the chords would be the same. So what I want to do next is have a look at the gaps between the chord and the functions of the chords that are used. Okay, now I want to have a look at the technical part, and I'll try and keep it as short and simple as possible. Now I showed you this sequence getting played starting on an A chord, and the chords used were A, C and D, but you obviously may want to move that around, so obviously the underlying chords are going to vary. So if you wanted to start it on a different chord, then all 3 chords would change. Now how do you work out the 3 chords that you're going to use? Well, to do that you need to know which scale degrees to play. And this is where it gets a bit more complicated because it depends what key you're seen to be playing the music in. Now in the case of Grange, like I said, it's A, C and D. So the key you would be playing that in would be A minor. So A would obviously be your first chord, C would be scale degree 3 and D would be scale degree 4. Now it can be argued that if you were using this, depending on the underlying notes and the feel of the music, you would be using the key relative to A minor, which is C major. If you take, say, On the Road Again by Canned Heat, that has a more, how shall I say, upbeat feel. It has a more major sound to the music. So although you would be playing the same 3 chords, A, C and D, like so, you could argue that it's actually in the key of C major. And if you argued that, then the scale degrees would be, the chord A would be scale degree 4, the chord of C would be scale degree 1, and the chord of D would be scale degree 2. Now I know that all sounds complicated, but ultimately to work out the chords, the best way of looking at it is the gaps between them. So if you take your starting chord you're playing on and then work out the gaps to get to the next chords, that's probably the easiest way to do it. So again, if you were starting on A, the gap is a 3 semitone gap to the next chord and then a 2 semitone gap to the following chord. So if you take the note A, 3 semitones up from that is C, 2 semitones up from that is D, and you can apply that formula to any starting chord. So say for instance, you wanted to start on B up here. 3 semitones up from that would be D, and 2 semitones up from that would be E. So that really is how you work out the gap. So if you want to play it in a different key, you just find the chord you want to start on, go 3 semitones up to find your second chord, 2 semitones up to find your next chord. Okay, or if you want it even easier than that, what I'll do is I'll show you different shapes you can play to play this chord sequence. Okay, if you don't fancy all the technical stuff, maybe the best way to remember this chord sequence is to think it as a shape that you play on the fretboard. Now, there's really 3 main ways you can play this, or 3 main shapes you can use to play this, and I'll just show you all 3 of them quickly. I'll just use power chords, which I'll show on screen what I'm playing. But the first main shape you're going to be playing is, again using A. If you start on the 5th fret of the lowest string and play an A power chord here, then what you're going to do is drop down a string, so you're starting your power chord on the 5th string, go down to fret 3, then back up to fret 5. So you've got this triangular pattern here, fret 5 on the lowest string, fret 3 on the next string up, and then up to fret 5. Like so. So that's one of the patterns. That's nice and easy to remember. Now, the next shape I want to show you is if you're starting on the 5th string. So let's say you were starting on a D chord here, starting on the 5th fret, or the 5th string here. What you would now do is you would now drop down a lot more. So you drop down to the 1st fret on the lowest string here to make an F chord, and then up to the 3rd fret on the lowest string here to make a G chord. So you would have So that's one of the shapes you would use if you were starting your power chord on the 5th string. The other shape you can use is you can use a straight up the neck shape. Now you can do this if you're starting on the 6th string making a power chord or on the 5th string. It doesn't matter, but what you're going to do is you're not going to jump between strings, you're just going to move straight up the neck. So let's take it B for instance here. On the 5th string here, so the 2nd fret of the 5th string to make a B power chord here. Now all you're going to do is slide this up 3 frets and then slide it up 2 frets. So you would get B, D, E like that. And that's probably one of the easier ones to play because you're just sliding up the neck. And you can do that if you're on the 5th string or on the 6th string. So for instance, if I started on an F sharp chord here, I would go like that. So it would be F sharp, A and B. So if you just remember these shapes, you can apply this chord sequence really to any key of music you want very easily. The next thing I want to look at is the timing of the riff. Now the easiest way to see it is if we look at it in 4/4 time, which most of these pieces of music such as Grange are in, and look at the beats there. So in 4/4 time you've got 4 quarter beats to each beat of the bar. The riff lasts 2 bars long, and basically what you do is if you've got 2 bars at 4 quarter notes each, that's 8 beats within this whole sequence. And And basically what it is, for 6 of those beats, you play the first chord. So if we're using the A example, it would be 6 beats of A, 1 beat of the next chord, which would be C, and 1 beat of the next chord, which would be D. Now obviously when you're playing this riff, you aren't going to use straight quarter notes, but to show you the timing, I will use straight quarter notes, and then I'll show you it played with some other notes. So if we're using straight quarter notes, it would basically be like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, like so, and that's how you get the timing of the music. Like I said, when you hear it played on some of the songs out there, they aren't playing it with such sort of metronomic precision on with quarter notes on each beat, so you'll hear it more like this. But that's for you to work out. If you learn it by playing a chord on each beat of the bar, you'll learn the underlying structure, and then once you understand and know that, it becomes far easier to mix it up and add different note durations in to make it sound a bit better. Another thing you can do with this sequence is switch around the last 2 chords in it. So what we've been playing, if we keep to starting on the A chord, we've been playing A, C and D, but you can play A, D and C as well, and it should fit into the music just the same. This is Seen in Spirit in the Sky by Norman Greenbaum. In the intro riff, he plays A, D and C, then switches it back to A, C and D. And it has a nice sound to it. It mixes it up a wee bit and adds a bit of variety into the riff. So I'll play it for you. So I'll go A, D, C, then A, C, D. Like so. And it does add a bit of variety to it. So just bear that in mind, that you don't have to stick to that sequence. You can switch the last 2 chords around. It should sound okay in the music. Okay, the last thing I just want to do is just have a look at what this progression actually is. Is it, really a chord progression, or is it more just a lick or a fill to put into your music? Well, it really depends on the piece of music, and I think you can see it as both. I mean, if you look at something like On the Road Again by Canned Heat, the notes tend to follow this as the chords move around, so it's definitely can be seen as a chord progression there. If you look at something like Grange by ZZ Top, maybe less so. So it could maybe be viewed more as just being more of a fill that's repeated through the music. But it's really up to you how you wish to view it. But it doesn't have to be the underlying sequence of the music. This sequence can be used as a nice little fill to add variety into the music. So if you're writing your own music, just be mindful of this sequence or progression. And you can use it and just drop it into pieces of music and use it more like a lick than an underlying chord progression to add a bit of variety to your music. But certainly have a go, have a play around with it, and if you're writing your own music, try dropping this sequence in and seeing how it sounds. Thanks for watching.